Hope you're well, folks. Welcome to the Human Spirit YouTube channel, and I want to do a video today on individualism and collectivism. Now, if you were listening to some people on Twitter, they'd have you believe that there's no coexistence here. You have to pick a side. There's one or the other, and they can't possibly coexist, but this is definitely not how I see it. In my opinion, the logical thing to do is to take the good elements of both and distribute them basically between legal and cultural aspects of society, which to me would be individualism being mainly law and partially cultural, with collectivism then being mostly something we promote culturally but existing where necessary in the law, like interventionism to protect the economy or the population from predatory monopolies. Now, people might be wondering, what do we like? It sounds empty when you say promote and incentivize culture. It sounds like establishment dribble about an economic stimulus package. So one example might be that we subject companies to advertising standards, and at the end of the year, we go through their whole year's advertising. And I'm just throwing figures out here. Let's say they're being charged 25% tax, and if we decide that at least 95% of their advertising was family orientated and promoting traditional values, then we drop their tax down by 5%. Another idea is to set up profit ratio margins in certain industries, make it illegal to make any more than a 60% profit markup in housing developments. And I'm not saying that should be the number, I'm throwing out examples here, I'm just brain farting about potential solutions. And we can incentivize people who are happy to have more kids but can't currently economically afford it. We can incentivize them. Anyone with more than two kids, we could say, gets a tax break of 5 to 10%. Whoever's working, both of them, whichever way it works. Now, they're just a few ideas of what can be done, but there's already existing things that do work, but we just need to amplify them or multiply them. Things like tidy towns, like, they instill a sense of ownership and pride. And arguably, one of the most important factors will always be a history curriculum that creates a shared sense of identity that stems from a common history and struggle. I don't think we can underestimate the importance of what you're given when you're young. And I think people underestimate the power of not only education but just the constant cultural promotional influences that surround us. I mean, we can all tell, we can look at the degradation in society and we can all see it's been working nicely for our enemy. So we just need to wield that when we get back in power. Now, I'm a bit of an individualist, but I think things like protectionism and, you know, China and Amazon trying to hoover up people's economies, they make it pretty obvious that you definitely need some collectivism in your economic policies. And, you know, we'd all like collectivism in our culture because, you know, things were better when you knew everyone who lived on your street, which is kind of bringing me along nicely to the people that seem to think individualism is done and we need to just go full on collectivism. So I want to talk a little bit now about why individualism is necessary to restrain collectivism, because we all know our enemy likes to manipulate anything. I truly believe it doesn't matter what we had in place. Whatever we had in place, they would have manipulated whatever was in front of them. So here's a couple of potential manipulations of a collectivist state, so to speak, right? Now, I mean, one is simply the surveillance state, and it's a pretty simple one, you know. You know, for your own good, we're just going to put cameras everywhere, literally everywhere, and then, you know, any crime that's committed, even if they had a balaclava on or something, you just follow them through the cameras until they get home or until they take their balaclava off. So it will become the ultimate deterrent for crime and it'd make us all safer. So surely this is in our best interest, you know? Let's roll with that. Another potential one is to imagine that the state might decide that basically all bodies upon death are theirs. You know, everyone is now an organ donor, everyone's body is now to be made available for scientific research. And I mean, this can go on and on. You know, we can start talking about people who are O negative, which is the universal blood type, and say that it's mandatory that they have to give blood because, well, we all know blood banks need blood, and their blood can be transfused into anyone. So I mean, all manner of manipulation can be manifested for the good of the collective. I mean, obviously, more organ donors and more scientific research would be a good thing, but I don't think anyone really wants to imagine that that's what's happening to their loved one, when they're sitting at their funeral. And the point I'm really making here is that individualism, to a large extent, protects us against all of this. We have individual autonomy, and the state has no right to just seize our body upon our death. So it has no right to surveil us and invade our privacy everywhere we go. So I do think that these things are both necessary, and they are both there to restrain each other. So I think really, if I was to try sum it up, I think the problem is that we're spending a lot of time arguing over the idea that we need to pledge allegiance to one or the other, when I really don't think that's the case. I think we need to basically use both of them where appropriate to our best interest. And as I said, stop squabbling over, whether we need to pledge allegiance to one side or the other. So that's about it for now, folks. There might be a part two follow up someday down the line when I think about this a bit more. But as a general rule of thumb, as I've said on Twitter before, I really think we're limited only by what we can imagine. We can implement anything that we can imagine. We can focus time on the necessary tasks as opposed to getting sidetracked. Anyway, take care. Chat to you all soon.